Hey guys, how's it going? Today I wanted to talk a bit about how Catholics conceptualize God. There's three really big things I want to cover in terms of how Catholics should understand God. Now, I think we're all very familiar with the idea of like God, especially God the Father, being like this, old man with a beard, a fatherly figure. That can be useful in terms of like artistic description or depiction, but that is not as accurate at all in terms of theology, in terms of the actual like doctrines that the church uses to describe what God is or what God is like. So, the first and most fundamental thing to understand is that God is the first principle of all things, everything with substance. What this means is, this is using the language of metaphysics, what this means is basically that anything that exists, anything that has substance to it, has that substance in some way or another, it falls back on God. Now, in previous videos, I talked a bit about this, harkening back to a visual used by Alex O'Connor, because he does a very good job explaining this idea. Basically, in order for a thing to exist, or in order for a thing to happen, it relies on other things. The example that I used before is a glass of water. In order for the water to stay up, if I'm holding it up, in order for the water to stay up, it needs to be acted on by the glass. But the glass, in order for the glass to stay up, it has to be acted on by my hand. In order for my hand to stay up, my shoulder needs to be there. Right? In order for my shoulder to be here, well, my whole body, and then the couch I'm sitting on right now, and then the floor, and the earth, and you can keep going back like this. There has to be some beginning point that allows all the rest of this to happen. That's God. All reality, everything in reality, everything that has substance in some way is able to have that substance because of God. That's what we mean when we say that God is the first principle of everything. Okay, that's the basis of all. That's not actually the three things I want to get into, one of the three things. That's the basis that you need to understand these three things. Sorry. The first of these is that God is unchanging. Why is this? Well, the principles of change that we understand, states moving from one thing to another, can't apply to the thing that everything else is based on. Because if it did, if God could change, if there was any kind of change, then that means God has to have been acted on by something capable of changing him. So basically, God would not be the most fundamental thing, or the most preeminent or prior thing. This includes time. As Catholics, we believe that God is atemporal, or without time, beyond time. What that means is we can't really say that God comes before time, because the word before implies time. What we say is that God is prior to time. Now again, using the language of metaphysics, using language from philosophy, the word prior is not necessarily meaning temporally. It doesn't mean that, time happened at like this point, but like if you go just back a few seconds before, then there's God. That's not how it works. What it means is, holding up this glass of water, my hand is prior to the glass. If you remove my hand, the glass cannot stay held up. It's prior. My hand has a more fundamental power or authority in order to hold up this glass than the glass itself does. So God is prior to time, right? His power, his authority is what the function of time is based on. Like, if you got rid of God, then you can't have time. Time can't function. Whereas if you get rid of time, God can still function exactly how he is. You haven't gotten rid of anything more prior. Okay, so God is unchanging. Both in that there's nothing that can change him, and that he's atemporal. Because God is not in time, he can't change from one state to another, because he would have to be within time to change, right? In order to say that he was this way and now he's this way, that's time. You have to be in time to process a before and an after. God has no before and after. It's just him. So, God cannot change. There are things that we can know about God despite his unchangingness, or because of his unchangingness. One thing is that he's logical. And by that I mean, like, he has a nature. He has a way that he is. It's not that he lacks a nature. It's not that he lacks any concrete being. The reality of concrete beings is based off of him. My existence, the camera that I'm using's existence, eventually falls back on God's existence. God's existence is unchanging, so that means it's singular. There is one certain way that he is. Certain, and I mean like, I mean guaranteedly. It is guaranteed that God is that one way that he is. Because if he's any different, then he would have always been that other way. God can't change, so he is what he is, basically. God, this is number 2, does not think. When we use the term thinking, we have an idea in our mind that relates to how humans think. See, you can describe human thought as a change in states. At one point, I can be thinking of a dog or a cat, or I could not be thinking of a dog or a cat. So that's a change. When I think of a dog versus when I don't think of a dog, that's a change in me. So if that's a change in me, God doesn't think that way. And if God is not temporal, then he can't think that way either. He can't at one time be thinking of a dog and at another time not be thinking of a dog if he has no time at all. He is always one singular way. So God does not think. If we could say that God were thinking of a cat. Hold up. If I were thinking of a cat, I could be thinking of it as old, or young, or sitting, or running, or laying down in that bright patch of sun. God clearly can't think of the cat in those ways because he's atemporal. He doesn't at one point think of the cat as laying in the sun, and at another point think of the cat as running down the alley. When he thinks of the cat, if you can say that he's thinking of the cat, he is thinking of all of those things in their totality and like the point in time at which the cat exists. You also can't say that at one point he's thinking of all those things and at another point he's not thinking all those things. If he conceives of it, that's just how it is. That's just the way he conceives of it. Permanently, because he doesn't change. He's either have always been thinking of that cat or is never thinking of that cat. You and I can't change the way that God thinks. Because we can't think of a thing that God's not thinking of, or that God can't think of. If God's not thinking it, we can't create it and make it enter his mind, because that would induce a change in God. He will have already been thinking of that thing prior to our being able to think of it. Thirdly, this is the third big thing. God does not have emotions. And this is the same rationality. We as humans can be at one point happy, and another point sad, another point angry. We might be more than one of these all at once. But God doesn't change like that. I can be described as in one state at one time or at another state at another time. But God can't change. God can't be described as sequences like in time. So we can't say that God is happy now and sad then. We can't say that he is made happy. See, when we think of things like this, when we use this kind of language, and this is the same reasoning behind the other things, right? If God is happy, he is always happy and will never not be happy. There's other arguments for why God can't be happy or can't have emotions either. One of the preeminent ones being that emotions are an embodied state, right? We have our emotions because we have a body to feel emotions in. That's not the argument I'm trying to make for this video. What I'm trying to discuss in this video is showing that God is not the way we think he is. When we use these terms like happiness and sadness in relation to God, right? When we tell small children, don't do that, you'll make God sad. I don't know if people say that anymore, but people said that when I was young. We're using an image that we as humans can understand, the image of emotion. Because we have emotions, so we can understand something about God in that way. But it's just an analogy, or a metaphor, or a symbol. It's not literally what's happening in God. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching this video. This was just a bit of a dive into some of the Catholic metaphysics behind how we understand God and what he is and how he is. If you liked it, please give this video a like. It really does help me out. There might be a hype button down there. I don't know if I have that on my channel yet. If you do, check that out. I think it promotes my video. I don't know. It's a new feature. YouTube hasn't told me what it does. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, rebuttals, arguments, whatever, throw them in the comments. I read all the comments and I try to answer everyone. I try to respond to everyone. And sometimes I make videos to respond as well. Anyway, and if you want to see more of my videos, hit the subscribe button. That way I will pop up in your feed every time I upload a new video. Thank you so much for watching. God bless.